Now the Peñas came with a vaca. You might recognize the name Vaca because Mr. Vaca was the gentleman whose name now is given as the name of your town. So it's not Cowtown, it's Vacaville, and that is because Mr. Vaca gave the land. Gave actually both his and my great-great-grandfather's land, but I'll get to that story later. This adobe here was where the Peñas lived. It's a modest structure. It was considered to be 2-bedroom plus the living area is how it was referred to. Later, according to some of the historical people, they thought that the next bedroom over, which is behind this wall, was actually a utility wall because it wasn't painted on the inside. But I believe that initially it was a bedroom. Where else would you put 6 children? That's what I have to say. So this is about the size of a 2-car garage. It is a tiny home, but it was a very sweet home inside, and even though it was very rough hewn, particularly in the beginning, it was a very pleasant place. The building itself was built either by Santa Barbara Chumash people, and we collected that crew on our way up here. That's one possibility. Or, as General Vallejo said, the people that actually built this adobe were Patlan people and were from this land because he had offered that as a benefit to getting land here. So I'm not sure yet which it is, but for sure it was Native American people that built this. It had to have been built in the summer because the adobe bricks have to bake in the summer. Right here are frames, that were used in the reconstruction of this adobe. So these aren't the original frames, but they are like the original frames. And what they did was they took a combination of mud, cow manure, straw, and water to form the bricks. The mixture was put in the frames, and then they were set out in the sun to bake. And that's how this building was made. The walls are about 2 feet thick, which allows for coolness in the summer, and it also retains heat in the winter. As you can see, if you look up, these are the original redwood beams. The lintels across the doors themselves were all redwood from the Napa Mountains. The piece of land that these people had, there were 10 square leagues. There were 44,386 acres of land. Great big plot of land. They had cattle. So the economy of this rancho in the beginning was the cattle. The cattle and all the products from the cattle. But back to the house, when they first built this house, they had a tule roof, and they would have not had glass windows. Glass windows didn't happen until around the 1850s. So they had cowhide windows. So they stretched the cowhide on the windows as tightly as they could. And the furniture that they had, remember, my dear grandmother was not able to bring her fine furniture with her, so they made whatever furniture they had. And the original furniture would have been the wooden furniture with the cow strips to make the seats, or the bed strips, the strips across the beds. They would have lived very simply, but one thing that's true about this family, I mentioned about being Castilian Spanish. I believe that my great-grandmother would have worn her silk dresses around the house and her silk scarves around the house. So they clearly always were the Spanish elite and had to maintain a sort of status or a class status. So even as simply and as rustically as they lived, they had a semblance of class about them. My great-great-grandfather would have worn his much of his silver on his body. They had the silver along their legs. On their horses, they had a lot of silver, and that was really where a lot of their wealth was on their horses. So they rode their horses everywhere. It wasn't dignified not to use your horse. That was probably true. That's probably how they talked about why they rode their horse. But also, if you're riding your horse, you're protecting your silver. So that's another reason, not to mention the fact that horses in themselves were important to these people who had to ride great distances on their land. So they kept their silver on their horse. We've heard that the story is that they kept the silver when they weren't on the horses in the attic above us. So there is an attic above us. Because of the location of this place, so this was again a very ideal place for someone to build an adobe. We chose a very good place. We have the lagoon right here, so there's water. The native people before them who populated this land, this was a place where the native people came. We had a confluence of creeks. We had water for much of the year, acorns, all of the foods that are available without having to grow anything. In fact, the native people here didn't grow crops. They actually just used the things that they were able to hunt or fish or pick from the land. So when our family came here in this beautiful area right here, they were able to be very successful. And as we go along, and I tell you more about the economy of this place, this went from a rancho to a hacienda. Hacienda is where you grow crops. This tree right here, this picture that I show here, is what the house might have looked like during the 1850s. This elm tree right here is as old as the house. So this tree is about 175 years old. We had it actually tested, and it is in fact that old. They said that because of the diseases now affecting the elm, up in the Davis and Sacramento area where these trees naturally grow, those trees have been apparently decimated by different kinds of diseases. This one has lived as long as it has, even though if you look at it, it looks like it has some issues. It's still got healthy growth and will grow and continue to grow much longer. But this remained fine because it was separated from all of the other plants. This family was able to bring seeds up from Los Angeles. We had a neighbor by the name of John Wolfskill, whose brother actually purchased the property that was adjacent to us. He purchased the property because he was a Mexican citizen. You could not get land unless you were a Mexican citizen. So his wife was Mexican, and he actually had become a citizen himself. But it was really the brother, John, who lived here, and it was John and his many different crops bringing up seeds from Southern California, from his brother's ranch down in Los Angeles, up to here. So they had incredible possibilities for fruit and vegetable growing here. And they took brought in it. We had a cork tree from somewhere. There were 2 cedars of Lebanon that a local merchant gave to us that actually came from Jerusalem. So this was, had quite a lovely garden in its day. There were mission grapes, the dark mission grapevines that were covering the porches on the outside, and that lent all the shade that you'd ever want. It was a very lovely life for about a minute here before the gold rush happened, and then many changes happened. When you think about this family coming all the way here to get away from whatever they were leaving in New Mexico, and yes, part of it's adventure, yes. Part of its adventure, and I can only speculate. It's interesting to me that I found that both my great-great-grandfather and Mr. Baca changed their name when they came here, which has always been curious to me. Were they just reinventing themselves? Were they fleeing some kind of political issues? Was it because of the Native Americans there? You know, why did they do that? Never been able to figure, at least not so far, been able to figure that out. But they both changed their names. So in New Mexico, he was known as Armijo. It's on the deed, Armijo. But my family insisted, no, we were not Armijos, we were Peñas. But who would ever know that they would have DNA or be able to trace people's history back? But somehow all the way up to my own father, who insisted, no, we were not Armijos, we were Peñas. So I don't know why they did that. It confused a lot of people for a long time. And Mr. Baca, Senor Baca, in New Mexico was known as Baca with a B. It's the same sound in Spanish, yes, Baca and Vaca is the same sound, but in California they use the V, and in New Mexico they use the B, which is curious. It's just curious that they both changed their names to some degree. So his life went on here. My great-great-grandmother had Native American servants. There's, I don't know very much about them except their Christianized name. There was a woman called Ramona, there was a woman called Mary, and another one called, there was Big Mary and Little Mary. And they lived in the attic, either alongside the silver, or this was at a different time, I don't know which, but they did live upstairs in this household. Because of the kind of culture that these people had, it was really different, and I've been seeking to find out more about who the people were culturally. They were, came during a period in California history that's considered the Los Californios, but these people weren't really Californios. They were from New Mexico, and they were different. They were not the same people that you might see down in Los Angeles or even along the coast there. I think they had been isolated in New Mexico to a certain degree and had more a European, kept more of a European look and feel around them. Some of the earliest recollections of the inside of the house, in fact, were that originally there were dirt floors, and originally, when it was very brand new, they would paint the dirt floor with cow blood to keep the dust down. It's a pretty gross thought, and I cannot imagine my great-grandmother approving of this. Eventually, she was able to get a nice rugs, they had velvet furniture, they had cornices of shells. So the cornices were shells, and then they had the lace drapes. There was a shawl on the table that was in the middle of the room that had the Bible on it. Many books in the home, and I'll discuss the education of my family later. But it was a very homey place. They did, while this is, everyone tells me that this is the front door, although we have two doors here, and when we open both doors, it really is the most wonderful breeze. But my speculation is that this door was mostly not used, that this was a door maybe that General Vallejo would have come into, and he did. They were apparently friends. So this would be the front, really the front door. But most of the living, and in a Spanish adobe like this, you'll notice that usually all of the bedrooms, all of the rooms will empty out into a courtyard. And that's because that's really where they did their living. They slept inside. They did maybe great-great-grandma, when she was sitting and knitting, she was inside, but they spent most of the time outside. And they had, somewhere over here, they had hornos, which are great big ovens that you could put a pig in, and they also would cook over campfire, where they put the big cauldrons on top of the rocks where they would cook food. She had much help from her native servants, and they would have all of their meals outside, of course getting up very early in the morning and having a very, very late day. These people worked really hard, even though to some of the observers of this particular time, where they didn't, they show or they depict this group of people as kind of like sitting outside, hanging out all the time or having parties. They really did work hard in their lives. As we look around the adobe here, you can tell how right now it's around maybe 55 degrees outside, and it's actually quite warm inside. So this house was kept warm inside by using ceramic bowls, and they would put charcoal in the bowl, and probably they needed to vent it somewhere, so perhaps they sat it there where there would be some place for the smoke to escape, but that's how they heated the inside of the house. As you can see, there's no fireplace in here. There's also no kitchen in here. Again, all of their eating was done outside. There's also no running water whatsoever, and the bathroom was outside. So this style of house you'll see all over the world. Somehow I had it in my mind growing up that this kind of structure came from the Native Americans, possibly because I'd seen it in New Mexico pictures or wherever you see this kind of structure. But you go back, you go to the Middle East, they're made out of the materials. The houses are, much like an adobe, they're made out of the materials that are there for people to use. So they used what they had here, but they found as they went along that the adobe, and they found this out all in California, particularly along the coast, that adobe is not a really good substance to make a house out of in a rainy area like this. So while sometimes it's really dry, as you know, there's been great floods here, and these kinds of events happened all during the years from the 50s to the 80s up until then the earthquake. There's been earthquakes. So there's been a lot of things geologically that has happened here that have been a challenge for these people. There's been no evidence of this house, this adobe, ever been painted. You'll see a lot of times, you'll see adobe houses that are painted white. In fact, if you look around, this is white. Well, they had to, they could do that, but it's expensive to have that kind of painting done. So using it on the inside would have probably made sense. And what they did was to just remud the outside. I also wonder too how closely this kind of brown building kind of hides in this kind of environment. white Adobe would stand out an awfully lot. And as we go along here, you'll see that maybe these people didn't want to be standing out so much.